Well, a question for you to ponder this morning and throughout the week. I'm kind of just going to shoot straight with you this morning, but when you hear this question, I want you to reflect on it in a place of kind of like a child would be curious, Lord, let's just be curious about this together, not in a place of shame, as we talked about a couple weeks ago. So the question's this: between Sunday, 10 a.m. right now, we're at Mass, and next Sunday, 10 a.m., your time to be called home to the Lord is in that week. If it's this upcoming week where He's going to call you home, are you ready? You're ready. That's good. That makes one of us. That was not my first answer in my own heart. My mom is a hospice nurse, and so if you're familiar with hospice or you've had any loved ones on hospice or been on hospice yourself, this is the end of life. And so they focus less on finding a cure to the illness, but this is if you've been diagnosed with terminally ill, she and the other nurses take care of you, kind of guide you into the next life. And she always says, very fascinating, she's like, in this profession, if you don't believe what Christians believe about the next life, about death, you're either Christian in this profession or you're depressed. I mean, honestly, what a miserable job if you don't believe what we believe about the next life. Death is hard for whoever it comes to, the family, and I'm sure we've all experienced that in our own life. But she said it's so fascinating. When people go on hospice initially, their cares are numerous. How am I going to pay for this? I'm worried about my house, my car, my this, my that. I have all these concerns. And I'm like, me too. Check, check, check. But she said the more that she talks to them, the closer they come to the end. Their focus gets hyper-fixated on two things. These are the only two things that seem to matter anymore. Here they are. One, how am I sitting with the big guy? How are things with him, who I'm going to meet here very soon? And do the people in my life know that I love them? Those are the only two things, she says, that they seem to care about anymore. The car, the anxieties, what people think about me actually just goes away. So that tells you something about what's actually important. But what I want to say to us today are there are actually 3 stages to life. The first stage is the womb. We're there for 9 months, give or take. It's a pretty good life. We're safe, we're taken care of, we're fed. It's the only world we've ever known for those 9 months. It's pretty good. And from what I understand, I don't remember this in my own life, but when those 9 months are up, you quite literally get forced out into the next world. It's like a little death. The baby is not super pleased about this. But after you get your bearings about you, it's pretty good in the real world. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, the real world. In the womb, you are in that world, not forever. It's a preparatory world. You're growing hair and fingers and eyes and all these different things. You're preparing physically to live in the real world. You're not meant to be there forever. It gets better than that. And in the real world, here we are. It has its ups and its downs. But this is also not the end. Living like this world is the end is like living as if the womb is our final destination. This isn't it. It actually gets better than this. That's the good news that Jesus came to bring us. Just like we spent 9 months in the womb preparing physically, we spend 90 years, give or take, in the real world to prepare spiritually to live in the really real world of heaven. This isn't it. This is preparatory. This is not it. The whole point of being here is to learn to love on earth the way that they love in heaven. We need to learn to love in the real world the way that they love in the really real world. You know, I think it's so funny when people who aren't Christians or don't share the Catholic teaching of like the next life, They kind of view our views on the next life like Tom and Jerry, like, nope, God's having a bad day, and that happens to be the day I'm called home, and then all of a sudden, the door opens, and down I go. It's like, that's not at all what this is like. You talk about a judgment. What's God judging? Can you be happy with me forever? Are you going to fit in the really real world? Do you love like we love and what we love up here? That's what he's judging. Are you learning how to love on earth the way that they love in heaven? And it's a lifelong project. But this life is like a school. We need to learn that in order to fit in up there. And I just say this, too, on the point. Purgatory is something often misunderstood. If this life is like school, where we need to learn that, purgatory is like summer school. You need to learn this at some point. And if you're not going to learn it here, you're going to have to learn fractions over the summer. And you know what? Kids always ask, how long do I have to be in summer school? How long do I have to be in purgatory? It's like, well, how long is it going to take you to want to learn fractions? We need to learn that in order to fit in up there in the really real world. That's the point of this life. We need to learn that. And any part of me and you and us that doesn't love like they love up there, it's not going with us. It is not going with us to the really real world. I was at Vacation Bible School. I see a number of familiar faces a couple weeks ago, and I gave them an option. Because one of the most common questions you get as a priest is, what's heaven like? And I'm like, well, I've never been there. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that heaven is more of a person than it is a place. What do I mean? It is certainly a place that we go, but it is more of a person than it is a place. So I gave them this option. I said, option A, all expenses paid, you get to go to Disney World. But here's the catch. You have to take with you the person in the world that drives you the most insane. Okay, option A. Happiest place on earth. Option B. You get an all-expenses-paid trip to Burger King. I like Burger King. Father Tony and I stopped there on the way up to our retreat. So I'm not knocking Burger King. But compared to the happiest place on earth, But here's the catch. At Burger King, you get to take with you your best friend in the world. Do you know how many of those kids chose option B for Burger King? Unanimous. Unanimous. What does that tell you? Heaven is heavenly because of who's there. Heaven is more of a person than it is a place. We need to learn to love on earth the way they love in heaven. We need to learn to love Him who makes heaven heavenly. If we don't know Him who makes heaven heavenly, we got to go to summer school. We got to figure that out. And, they ask too, what makes hell hellish? Well, who's not there? It's the same logic. What makes heaven heavenly is God. And the ultimate screw up, ladies and gentlemen, is investing in things that nobody really cares about and that aren't actually all that important in the really real world. Those things aren't bad. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But Jesus is going to look at us at the end of time at that judgment and say, do you love me more than any other person or thing? And do you love what I love? Again, it's those two things Mom talked about. Big guy, others. To close here, as an old priest put it at the seminary, there will be no U-Haul behind your hearse. It's not going to happen. That's why Jesus says in the gospel today, do not work for food that perishes. Don't fill up your U-Haul. It's not going with you. It's not going with me. But what does go with you? He who makes heaven heavenly. Love goes with you. Those things where if your life was demanded of you, if you were put on hospice, what would my mother notice about you? What's becoming all of a sudden really, really, really hyper important right now? Well, it's what's actually important in the really real world. Love of God. And do the people in my life know that I love them? That's the food that lasts to eternal life. That's the love. That's the love that makes heaven heavenly. And so my question for you today, again, this isn't in shame. Because as we talked about a couple weeks ago, God's patient. God's working. He works with us. He knows we're weak. But just in curiosity, maybe in your private prayer today, you ask yourself, with the Lord, Lord, if this is the week you're calling me home, how am I doing? Am I ready? And if the answer's no, which for many of us it's probably like, yes but no, not as emphatically as that. That was wonderful. But what I want to just encourage you is maybe pray about, all right, Lord, I'm not perfect yet. I might need to go to summer school. How can I get a first down this week in your love? Pray about that this week, and I'll do the same.